In the earlier programs, we started this program during the pandemic on 2nd of April 2020, and we have already completed 150 episodes. And for today's program, besides our patron president, Dr. Subramaniam Swamy, we have Abhijit Iyer and Ravi Shankar Kapoor, who is a journalist. Abhijit Iyer is a senior fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, a defense economist. He is pursuing his PhD in war studies from the King's College, London. He has regular columns in numerous news publications. He is also co-authored 2 books, one on military reforms and another on Afghanistan. And he has a 3rd book on the Hindu rights in India. Additionally, he has several academic publications to his credit dealing with defense and foreign policy. Prior to his current post, he coordinated the National Security Program at the Observer Research Foundation. Currently, he is a visiting scholar in Sandia National Laboratories and at the Stimson Center, Washington, D.C. We welcome him to our show, and he has discussed in a previous 2 or 3 weeks ago, he has been on our show discussing the same subject, and there was a lot of interest shown on the subject. That's why this is in the series of a 3rd program on the same subject. Our other guest today is Ravi Shankar Kapoor. He is a Delhi-based journalist and author. He is the editor of www.thehindochronicle.com. I repeat, The Hindu Chronicle. Having spent over 3 decades in the profession, he has worked with several prominent publications like the Financial Express and the Asian Age. In March 2020, he founded another very interesting website online, www.indianarrative.com, a news portal focused on defense and security. We welcome him to our show for this interesting discussion. Which side should India be, Ukraine or Russia? I have to thank our viewers for their support for the previous program, which we had on the 13th of March 2022. And that was on the implication of the 5 state assembly election results on the future Lok Sabha elections of 2024. And the viewership has been more than 93,619 viewers till now. And you can always watch our past programs on YouTube on the Virat Hindustan Sangam channel. I have to thank my co-host, Professor Arvind Chaturvedi from Delhi, and Ramesh Swamy for every week hosting the program with me on our Virat Hindustan Sangam channel. I have to thank our other technical team members who are behind the scene. That is Ashish Shetty, Tejas Navalgul, Swaminathan, Ishwar Iyer, Gadgi Rakesh, Ajesh Nair, and Vishal Mehta for their support to put this program together every Sunday at 8 p.m. So with these words, it's over to Dr. Swamy to hear from him on which side are we, Ukraine or Russia? Which side should we be, Ukraine or Russia? With this, I request Dr. Swamy to initiate this discussion, and then we will hear from Abhijit and journalist Ravi Kapoor. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jagdish. We are starting late, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. I frankly would like to hear these 2 experts. My stand is very clear. I've written already two op-eds in the Hindu newspaper. I am totally on the side of Ukraine in the sense that it's a democratic country with a membership in the United Nations, and it was violated by another country, Russia, which is supposed to be a veto-holding UN Security Council member. And the Russians used all their weaponry to try and subdue them, and the Ukrainians are fighting very valiantly. A few things I would like to say: that we have been sort of abstaining in the vote, but we have been seen the world over as supporting the Russians, whatever the reason and all that is given. But there are a few things that I would like to clarify and then hand it over to the experts here. the two experts here to say. First thing is that it has been widely said that this Ukrainians have never supported India, and it's only the Russians who have been supporting us throughout, and we shouldn't let the Russians down now. Whatever crime they commit doesn't matter, like violating the sovereignty of another country, but because they have been supporting us, we should do that. Now, there are some problems with this. Russia is a new country, and that was created in 1992 after the Soviet Union broke up. Ukraine was part of Soviet Union, and what is today called Russia was also part of Soviet Union. So, what is it that after 1992 that we needed the Russians for? I don't see any of that. And furthermore, I don't want to go into the details about how the Russians have behaved on the question of Chinese troops coming into India. In fact, they misled us on April 20th when they said that the Chinese have only come for routine military exercises. In fact, they had actually come to capture Depsang. And so, therefore, and they captured Depsang. Therefore, I think we need a clear understanding that today's Russia has got nothing to do with the Soviet Union. Number two, as far as Ukraine is concerned, I asked the External Affairs Ministry for a note, and they gave me a year-old or 2-year-old note, which I have here. And in that, I'll read out just a sentence to show how false it is to say that the Ukrainians have been opposing us all through. India has an extensive bilateral relationship with Ukraine, spanning all spheres of cooperation. India was one of the first countries to recognize Ukraine. Government of India recognized the Republic of Ukraine as a sovereign country in December 1991 and established relations in 1992. And then it goes on and various exchanges and all in this 5-page note. So I have not seen anywhere the Ukrainians being hostile to India and that being used as an excuse. Perhaps the Russian lobby is very active in our country, and they have an embassy which they have taken over. The Soviet Union's embassy they have taken over. They've taken over the Soviet Union's veto holding membership also. How did they get it? Why didn't the Ukraine get it? Why didn't Estonia get it? Why didn't so many other countries which were part of the Soviet Union, why didn't they get it? Why Russia was automatically the successor to the Soviet Union, the UN Security Council? Now I think that the Americans have begun to re-examine that and to see whether the Russians should be pushed out of the United Nations Security Council. Anyway, the first thing is that let's not go into all this past. Let's go by merit. And the merit is that a peaceful democratic country called Ukraine was invaded by the Russians with all their military armory, except nuclear weapons. They went in. They have not succeeded. They were originally told it will take only 2 days, but now we find even after 33 days, they're or 28 days, whatever, they are still nowhere. In fact, on some areas, they are now retreating. So this valiant Ukrainian display of patriotism and force is something that we must admire and support. There are usually other things which I don't want to go into, that Ukraine was a Nazi country. The present president of Ukraine, he is a Jew, and his father was suffered heavily at the hands of the German army when they came and took over Ukraine. And in fact, if there was any sympathy originally in Ukraine for the Nazis, it was because the Soviet Union had occupied Ukraine and there was enormous brutality that had been done, and so they thought they'll get some relief with now the change in people who occupying their country, but it wasn't so. It's like we expecting that the British would be better than the Mughals, and it turned out the British were more sophisticated than the Mughals, but they were not any better. Now, in our country, the Soviet lobby is extensive, and that has now literally been taken over by Russia. Putin and Sonia Gandhi have very long relationship. Both of them have connections with KGB, which is all documented. You can read Yevgena Albert's book on the state within the state, where this all has been brought out. Putin personally escorted Sonia Gandhi in 2005 to Vladimir, where Sonia Gandhi's father, who was a soldier in the Hitler's army, had been taken prisoner, and because he was supplicant to the Soviets, so he was let off early. So she went to he took her to show where the jail was, where her father stayed. I mean, that was the extent of, and then whenever Putin has come to India, he has made a call on Sonia Gandhi. So there is a kind of a continuing nexus which we have to now unravel, because the enormous propaganda that is being done against Ukraine, we don't think that an independent country like India should be subject to that. So with those remarks, I would hand over to, I think first would Abhijit like to go first, or second? Would you like to go first or second?
Either or, doctor, you decide.
All right, then I will start with our newcomer here, Ravi Kapoor, and ask him to express his opinion whether India should align with Ukraine or should align with Russia in the present conflict that is taking place.
Thanks, Dr. Swami. The subject, I'll give a quick rundown of my views on the subject. A few points I would like to make. First, the way it is worded, today's subject, which side should India be, Ukraine or in Russia? It's very appropriate for the simple reason that it rules out the non-alignment, which the policy we have been following since Jawaharlal Nehru formulated it, and it's very unfortunate we do it even today. Though today it goes by the name of strategic autonomy. Nobody knows what does it mean, but it's called strategic autonomy. So that's the first thing. The second thing, related to this is that non-alignment is bad. It is simply bad. It's what should I say? It's cognate is socialism, communism, and it was meant to promote socialism and communism in India, all over the world. And we should always remember that socialism and communism are violent ideologies which killed over 100 million people in the last century. So this is bad. Now, coming to the third point, uh, we cannot be non-aligned when evil marches. This is what happened in Europe when Hitler militarized Rhineland in the mid-30s, at 1936. Then he went after smaller states. Austria, he annexed Sudetenland, that Czechoslovakia, and he was allowed to march on, and he went on doing that. The result was the Second World War, millions dying, death, devastation, which the world had never seen before. So Putin is 21st century Hitler with a nuclear arsenal. So we should recognize that. My next point is that he's evil because this irredentism he is promoting. This is very bad. I mean, today it is that Donbass region, Crimea, he has already annexed. So he would go on Poland, and these claims can always be made, and he will make the claims that he has been making. As for Russia doing us, I mean, there is, as Dr. Swami, you pointed out that we have this thing, कि हमारा क्या होगा? We take a lot of arms from them. What would happen? Now, first of all, Russia does no favor to us. It's basically it hardly has anything. It's primary goods exporter and arms exporter. So we are their largest arms buyer, and we may suffer a little, but Russia would suffer more. So that I mean, when Babri Masjid fell, everybody said that what would happen? The Arabs won't sell us oil to us. That never happened. We never had problems on that count. Money is money. And today, Europe is saying all those things about they're still buying oil from Russia. My well, one second. There's another point I wanted to make. Uh, Again about this China thing. Now, Russia, Soviet Union, as you rightly pointed out, it helped us sometime at one point of time, but that was Soviet Union and not Russia. And Russia is an ally of China. If there's a problem, we have a problem with China, Russia will definitely help China, or it would never help us. And if we get cozy with them, the West won't help us either. So we would get standard. And you see, it was not always that the Soviet Union also helped us. In 1968, it supplied arms to China, to Pakistan, which Mrs. Gandhi pointed out in her independence speech in 1968. She said something to the effect, I can read out, but that's beside the point. I mean, anybody can see that. And another point, now this thing that the reasons he has offered are all bogus reasons. There's Nazification. I mean, it's a Nazi country. As you said, a president is Jew. Not only that, I mean, maybe he's an accidental Jew or whatever, but a country which elects a president, a Jew president, which other country other than Israel has a Jew president? I don't think there has been any major country which has a head of state or head of government who is Jew. Not, I don't think America, not Disraeli war had a Jewish background, but he was there has been no Jewish prime minister in UK, certainly not in Germany, and no other country. So a country which elects a Jew prime minister president, and it's not a Jew majority country, by the way. They are a minority as they are anywhere else in the world except in Israel. So calling that a Nazi, I mean, this is ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. It's patently false. Now, another thing I wanted to point out was that yes, see, in the West as also in India, perhaps the biggest culprits, if not the biggest, surely big culprits, they are climate change fanatics. The people who are against fossil fuels, who always keep talking about climate change, they want America, Europe, and all these countries to stop producing oil, but not Saudi Arabia, not Russia, not Venezuela. So they are the people who have actually emboldened and enriched, fattened Putin, and that they are perhaps the main culprits who have emboldened Putin to such an extent that he attacked Ukraine. And also, I would like to say that my last point is that now this non-alignment thing, fence sitting. I don't know what it's fence or what. Where are we sitting? We don't support Ukraine, so we displease the West. Now we don't even support Russia. I mean, we are not. Of course, we have abstained. We have not supported them. Secondly, what are we buying from them? Very small amount of oil, which would do no good to them. So that would frustrate Russia. They would also get upset. So whom are we pleasing? We are pleasing nobody. So my point is that we should be with Ukraine fully, Of course, America has problems, West has problems, Biden has cognitive issues. All these things are there. Kamala Harris is a joke. 4 days before the war, she made this statement, ridiculous statement. She said 3 or 4 days before that, I approve, uh, I approve and admire President Zelensky's desire to join NATO. Now, this was when he was about to fire his first shots, Putin. These people are, of course, they are clueless. They are actually ridiculous people. I wish, and Ukraine, everybody in the right frame of mind would wish that Trump was there. But still, whatever it is, we must be with Ukraine and the West, and we should condemn Russia unequivocally. These are my views on the subject.
Okay, thank you. Now, Abhijit.
Thank you, Doctor. So my views on this are very clear. India needs to be on India's side. I can point out 100 different instances of perfidy by Russia. I can point out 100 different instances of perfidy by America as well. Right? Now, if America was so serious about about democracy and all of that, why is it that they still refuse to protect Taiwan against China openly? They keep threatening, oh, we might not. In fact, during the Senkaku Island dispute just about 5-6 years back under Obama, Obama threw Japan under the carpet, under the truck. Where he said we will only protect Japan when Japan's territorial integrity is threatened. So these relationships, they're not like, a friendship where it's absolute loyalty and things like that. The only loyalty is a treaty alliance. Sometimes even a treaty alliance does not work. Now, in this situation, I think somebody being a dictatorship, somebody being a democracy is completely irrelevant to me. My thing is, where does my interest lie? If I support Ukraine today, what am I getting out of it? Does it have a veto in the Security Council? No. Does it have some great control over supplies and things like that, where it can give me subsidized new age minerals as well as oil? No. Russia, does it have a veto on demand? Yes, it does. Can Russia supply us with lots of critical minerals? Yes, it can. So I'm quite happy to shed crocodile tears. And I have to tell you, I never shed real tears. All my tears are crocodile tears. And I'm quite happy to shed these crocodile tears for Ukraine. But personally, I have zero sympathy either for Ukraine or for Russia, for that matter. Just getting back to how this perfidy blows and things like that. Absolutely true. Ukraine is also a successor state of the USSR, and therefore all the many favors. I personally don't believe in international relations. These old favors rendered actually count for much, especially when you have a successor state. But when we're talking about arms supplies, let's not forget that America was still about 10-12 years back supplying Pakistan with F-16s. Let's not forget that till about 15 years or so back, Ukraine was supplying Pakistan with T-80 tanks. Let's not forget that till about 7 years back, in fact, since the last 8-9 years, the Ukrainians have refused to supply us ship engines for our warships. All right, they have refused. Now, going to the UN Security Council statements, this is after Ukraine became independent. I want to read out two statements. There are too many statements to read out where Ukraine has made extremely negative comments about India, but I'm going to make just two particularly. One is with regards to the nuclear tests. Both are with regards to the nuclear tests. And remember, the only reason that resolution was watered down, which wanted full-blown sanctions on India and things like that in 1998, was because of two people threatening a veto. Russia and France. Not the USSR, but Russia and France. Again, we don't owe the Russians anything for it. At the same time, when a country is pathologically against you, you can't just give it a free pass either. Let me read out what Volodymyr Yelchenko said. His country found inadmissible any actions that could aggravate tensions in the South Asian region, I'm reading out from the UN site, and possibly cause a major conflict. In this connection, Ukraine welcomed the declared readiness of India and Pakistan's leadership for negotiating the disputable issues, and it was ready to support the process. Any other course of action or attempts to preserve the status quo should be deemed unacceptable. Should that scenario take place, Ukraine would seek consultations with the nuclear powers, which provided the relevant security for a new reading of the assurances in view of developments. And India should put aside its nuclear ambitions and not allow any further aggravation of the situation in the region. Contrast this with the Russian statement, which just said, we are disappointed. The second conference that happened immediately after this, which was the formal vote on it, again, Ukraine's representative, hostile statement. Again, I will contrast it with what the Lavrov at that time was the UN Security Council representative. But anyway, Mykola Maimescu, reading a statement from Ukraine's foreign ministry, said Ukraine, which had voluntarily eliminated the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world and committed itself not to carry out nuclear testing, condemned the step taken by India, endangered existing international arrangements for nuclear non-proliferation. I can read out 10, 15, 20 different statements where the independent state of Ukraine has gone against India. So personally, in public, I'm happy to shed crocodile tears, but if the Russians want to bomb Ukraine flat, they're most welcome to do so. मेरा भैंस का कुछ नहीं हुआ है, मेरा भैंस पानी में नहीं गया है. If Russia wants to destroy itself with all the sanctions, more than welcome. Please go ahead and destroy yourself, because it provides me, it makes you more desperate and provides me with more opportunities to buy cut price oil. They've already offered us oil at cut price discounts. They're apparently offering us all kinds of other minerals, nickel, zinc, and all of that at cut price discounts. And I welcome that. Now, part two. You know, when I think I dealt with the Nazi denazification process before, showing you what a puppet he was. In fact, since then, his Nazism has gone even further, Zelensky's Nazism. He has banned all the opposition parties, all the 11 opposition parties representing the Russian minorities. Nazism starts with the disenfranchisement of your minority voices. So Zelensky may be a Jew. That's perfectly fine. The Judenrat in the concentration camps were Jews, but the Judenrat were the ones selecting who will go into the gas chamber and who will not. So it really doesn't. So being a Jew doesn't give you a free pass on an open. Just this morning, we have seen 60 Russian soldiers being captured by the Azov battalion, shot through their knees, being kneecapped. The only videos we have seen of war crimes happen today have been under Zelensky by Ukrainian troops against Russians. So I am not the one to moralize. Tomorrow, if my ally is a friend and does all kinds of hanky-panky, I am quite happy to turn a blind eye to them. The problem here is we are in a situation where our primary security interest has always been to make Russia and China fight. We cannot allow a bloc of Russia and China to develop. Nehru was very clumsy the way he went about it. I personally don't think this government has the skill to develop that particular thing, though ultimately we did succeed in the 60s, more for their reasons than our own reasons. But this is something that right now we desperately need to exacerbate. In fact, what America and NATO have done is they have crucially damaged Indian security. By pushing Russia irretrievably into China's hands, America has calculably, verifiably damaged Indian security. Now, as much as I love free markets and things like that, the biggest harm to free markets that have been done right now have been by NATO and America in basically seizing and eliminating global public goods that we were told we're going to hold permanently. Irrespective, it would not be cancelled for anybody. Things like SWIFT, things like sovereign reserves. And then, we being the aggrieved party, we already have to pay a very heavy price for all kinds of imports right now, not to mention fertilizer imports, especially because of phosphate and nitrates mainly come from Russia and Belarus. We have to pick up the tab and we have to then genuflect and make their foreign policy priorities our foreign policy priorities. What is Ukraine's relevance to the Indian national interest? Zero. अगर यूक्रेन जिंदा रहे या यूक्रेन मरे, मेरा कुछ नहीं जाता है. So, and Dr. Swamy, I grew up you know very well, my mother was a Stalinist Maoist who indoctrinated me into the Stalinist Maoist faith. And it was you that, it was your prescient wisdom that got both my mother out of her Stalinist indoctrination and her Maoist indoctrination. And you also set me free and onto the path of capitalism and free markets. And you were, of course, the one who taught me that, our interests are supreme. Now, when we are dealing with two thieves, two liars, two perfidious countries, two perfidious power blocks, चोरों के गुफा में खुद को चोर बनना पड़ता है कभी कभार. We can't be the Virgin Mary in a चोरों का गुफा. So I will end here.
Well, I think it is going to be a very interesting discussion. We have 2 points of view. I would only like to ask you one question before I hand it over to my colleagues. You quoted you have not been able to quote a single statement of the present president against India. You quoted all those people who have been deposed or sent out. Those are the people who you have quoted. So you can't hold the present Ukraine responsible for a statement of discredited past presidents of Ukraine. So anyway, Arvind, would you like to start, or you want somebody else to start?
Yeah, Dr. Swamy,
Yes.
thank you for giving me this chance. I would like to speak in Hindi to benefit our Hindi speaking viewers.
ठीक है.
मैं पहले बात जो अभिजीत अय्यर ने अभी तक कही है, मैं 100% अभिजीत की राय का समर्थन करता हूं, हालांकि उसके कारण दूसरे हो सकते हैं. पहली बात तो मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं कि ये भारत की लड़ाई नहीं है. भारत इसमें किसी भी तरह से एक पार्टी नहीं है. यूक्रेन और रूस का जो द्वंद है, उस द्वंद से भारत का कोई मतलब नहीं है. और मैं अभिजीत की इस बात का भी समर्थन करता हूं कि हो सकता है रूस ने मानवता का उल्लंघन किया हो और यूक्रेन के ऊपर जुल्म ढाए हों, सितम ढाए हों, लेकिन यूक्रेन के ऊपर जो सितम ढाए हैं, भारत को उससे कोई सहानुभूति तो हो सकती है. हम सहानुभूति जो व्यक्त कर सकते हैं, लेकिन यूक्रेन के साथ खड़े होकर रूस को निंदा करने के लिए या रूस की प्रताड़ना करने के लिए अगर कोई दूसरा खड़ा है तो भारत को उसके साथ नहीं जाना चाहिए. मैं इस राय का हूं कि भारत के प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जो स्टैंड लिया है, जो न्यूट्रल स्टैंड लिया है, और यहां जब मैं न्यूट्रल स्टैंड की बात कर रहा हूं तो मैं रविशंकर कपूर जी की बात का साफ डिनाई करता हूं कि उन्होंने कहा कि न्यूट्रल नहीं होना चाहिए. ये जो परिस्थिति ऐसी पैदा हुई है, इस परिस्थिति में न्यूट्रल स्टैंड नरेंद्र मोदी जी का भारत के लिए सर्वश्रेष्ठ स्टैंड है. भारत को सिर्फ अपनी परवाह करनी चाहिए, भारत को अपने हित देखने चाहिए. ये बात मैं रेखांकित करता हूं जो अभिजीत मित्रा ने 2 बार कही है. और मैं इस बात का पूर्ण समर्थन करता हूं कि रशिया ने हो सकता है गलत काम किया हो मानवता की दृष्टि से, किंतु हमारे संबंध रूस से पहले भी रहे हैं. अगर हम 1970 की बात करें, नेहरू टीटो की बात करें, जो रविशंकर कपूर जी ने स्टार्ट किया, नैम के बारे में, नॉन अलाइंड मूवमेंट के बारे में, गुट निरपेक्ष के बारे में, हम भले ही गुट निरपेक्ष का नाम न ले, लेकिन हमारा स्टैंड वही होना चाहिए जो गुट निरपेक्ष है कि रूस लड़ाई बंद करे. प्रधानमंत्री जी ने पुतिन से बात की है उनको समझाया है। यूक्रेन के साथ हमारी पूरी सहानुभूति है और हम चाहते हैं कि युद्ध बंद हो, लेकिन हम यूक्रेन के साथ खड़े होने में हमें कोई लाभ नहीं है इस समय। इसलिए जब ये प्रश्न आता है कि भारत को किसके साथ खड़ा होना चाहिए, वो भारत का जो स्टैंड है वो बिल्कुल सही स्टैंड है। नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने बिल्कुल सही कदम उठाया है।
एक सवाल मैं जरूर अभी पूछना चाहता हूं। आपने कहा कि हमारी पूरी सहानुभूति है यूक्रेन से कि उनके ऊपर आक्रमण हुआ, तो कम से कम उस आक्रमण का तो खंडन होना चाहिए ना। उसमें आप तटस्थ रहोगे तो आप भीष्माचार्य और द्रोणाचार्य जैसे द्रौपदी का वस्त्रहरण होना का साक्षी बनोगे और कुछ नहीं बनोगे।
भारत एक परमाणु ताकत है और परमाणु ताकत होने के बाद भी भारत ने हमेशा ये मेंटेन किया है कि पहला वार हम नहीं करेंगे, हमारी तरफ से युद्ध नहीं होगा, हम शांति चाहते हैं। यूक्रेन में भी शांति चाहते हैं, यूक्रेन में भी शांति चाहते हैं, और इसके लिए हम रूस पर दबाव बनाने का भी प्रयास कर रहे हैं। 4 बार पिछले 31 दिनों में 4 बार प्रधानमंत्री ने पुतिन जी से बात की है।
पुतिन से बात किया, कुछ नहीं निकला उससे। मैं ये कहता हूं कि ये जो इन्होंने आक्रमण किया है एक सीमा पार करके दूसरे देश में घुस के जो किया है, ये तो हमारी सारी यूएन चार्टर के विरुद्ध में है। तो इसमें कम से कम
केवल यूएन चार्टर के विरुद्ध में है, बल्कि जो हमारा ब्रिक्स का स्टैंड है, ब्रिक्स में भी एक प्रस्ताव इस तरह का आया था कि ये ऐसा
मैंने तो बाहर निकाला था उसको।
जी
में तो मैं ये कहता हूं कि आप इससे इधर उधर मत करिए, भारतनाट्यम मत करिए। साफ है कि रूस ने सीमा पार करके दूसरे देश में घुसकर उन्होंने जो भी किया है, कितना भी उनके पास न्याय था, ये वो थी, उसमें नहीं जा रहा हूं। जो आक्रमण किया है उसका खंडन भारत करनी चाहिए। जब ब्रिक्स में हमारे दिल्ली में जब ब्रिक्स की मीटिंग हुई, वहां प्रस्ताव पास किया था कि कोई आर्म्ड एक्शन होना नहीं चाहिए अपने राइट्स के लिए। तो ये इतना मैं कह रहा हूं आपसे कि आपकी बारी, और जो अन्य विषय हैं उस पर मेरा कुछ कहना नहीं है, बाकी लोग टिप्पणी करेंगे और आखिर में हो सकता है मैं कुछ कहूंगा। बट आज इससे आपसे इतना ही निवेदन करता हूं कि आप अपनी मानवता दिखानी है, तो फिर जो आक्रमण हुआ है जिसमें कई लोग मरे हैं, उनके उसमें आपको इसको निंदा करनी चाहिए और खंडन करनी चाहिए। Okay.
Can I quickly answer that question?
No, you come in last. You'll get a chance last.
No, my question. Okay, Ravi Kapoor ji, boliye.
Ravi Kapoor also will speak last. I mean, first
my
you people finish.
Which I have been saying, and all our speakers, some of our speakers are trying to divert. We have an United Nations. We have a BRICS statement, what was published, India and Russia issuing that statement, no country can be cross over the border and attack another country. So all this diplomacy, United Nations, all these various groups or BRICS or various other things, that is all a farce. So when it comes to international politics, either you have to look at only your self-interest, or do we follow some norms? A country is invaded and we say it's in our interest, that interest, they have done this, they have done that. Tomorrow, then what we expect? When China has come into crossed our LAC, while they were denying it earlier, koi aaya nahi, koi gaya nahi. Now, when the foreign minister of China has come and Jai Shankar, our foreign minister, is making some noise, so that it will be the same condition all over the world. So I want to know from Abhijit and Arvind that you say we should have been neutral or whatever words you are using, but we are not condemning it. We may have talked to them 5 times. What is the use when a country has been invaded by another country and we are just giving commentary and says we will be neutral? What is the use of that neutral business, and what is the United Nations doing?
Uh,
So basically, this is my
Ramesh.
point, which I think at some stage our friends
Yeah,
will
I
have
agree.
to respond.
Sure,
Ramesh,
they
you
will.
have anything?
Yeah, Ramesh. Yes, Ramesh.
And
Yeah.
also, 1 minute, one more point. We always
Yeah.
are talking in 1971 and that year and this year. I cannot understand. Was Ukraine not part of the Soviet Union?
Exactly.
So I want to know that when did Russia stand with us? It was the Soviet Union, if at all stood by us, it was the Soviet Union, and Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Was it not Ukraine having nuclear weapons that time and subsequently?
Yes.
So all the credit goes to Russia and discredit goes to Ukraine. So I want some clarity on this, because people are wondering. We are in a roundabout way, our national interest, our that interest. A country has been invaded by a neighboring country. Are we going to take a stand or not? That's what I want clarity, whether it is stood by us, not stood by us. Then we'll say every decision will be if they stood by us or not stood by us. So
See,
like a
अमेरिका
comment-
अमेरिका और नाटो मिलके यूक्रेन को एक पॉन की तरह इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, और यूक्रेन अपने आप को इस्तेमाल होने दे रहा है।
नहीं,
और
मुझे
भारत
बताइए, मुझे ये समझ
पहले तो
नहीं, मुझे
आक्रमण
ये
वहां
समझ में
हुआ।
नहीं आ रहा है। अरविंद, मुझे ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा है। मान के चलो यूक्रेन नाटो में जाना चाहता है, तो आपको क्या तकलीफ है? वो एक सॉवरेन देश है, उसको उसकी पॉलिसी को उसको तय करने का पूरा अधिकार है। आप ब्रिक्स में जा सकते हो, आप क्वाड में जा सकते हो। हाँ, तो यूक्रेन में भी कहीं जाना है, वो ठीक है, रशिया को उसके बारे में थ्रेट हो सकता है, मगर आप उसको इन्वेड करते हो, वो नाटो में जाना चाहता है, तो कल कोई हम ब्रिक्स में जाना चाहते हैं तो कोई हमारे पर अंदर आ जाएगा हमारे देश में। ये कोई तर्क नहीं हुआ कि वो नाटो में जाना चाहता है, उसके लिए उसके ऊपर इन्वेजन हुआ है। ठीक है, अमेरिका कोई संत नहीं है, मैं नहीं कहता अमेरिका संत है, ना कोई यहाँ कह रहा है, मगर अगर वो नाटो में जाना चाहता है उसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि उसके ऊपर इन्वेजन होना चाहिए।
Yeah, Ramesh.
Yes, sir. So, do you want? I mean, there are a lot of questions raised. Do you want them to be answered? But I also just going to add one more question to it. But before I do that, I just want to share something. So
Yes.
everybody can see this. This is what I want to do. Don't be a fence sitter. I mean, I'm just putting this very decently. I mean, it's just no point sitting on the fence. Take a stand. You know, sitting on the fence, like when Abhijit said, "Oh, India has to be on its interest." If sitting on the fence is being on interest, I disagree with that. Anyway, so having said that, Abhijit, if you look at
You mean if you sit on a fence, your backsides will be paining you? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Dr. Swami, putting it very, very, very mildly, it's caused numbness, and everybody can understand it's just not numbness, it's beyond that.
Okay, all right.
See, that Abhijit, again, as most of them already expressed, invading another country, again, per se, I mean, for what? Saying that they'll be brought into NATO and stuff like that. I don't think it's justified to say, oh, because, I mean, there is no justification to invade another country, number one. Second, if you look at this, the China, Russia, India triangle, India has a problem with China in the border. So if either of those countries, China and India, go into war, what is going to be Russia's position? Are they going to be neutral? The chances of Russia supporting China is higher. Would you say that? Is that a fair possibility? So, given this equation, how does India gain by being neutral in this? So that's my question.
Okay, let's go back to the speakers one by one. Abhijit, you want to start?
Abhijit, you are
You're
muted.
muted.
Okay, yeah. Okay, got it. So I'm going to answer this sequentially as I got it. Zelensky's stance on India as opposed to previous presidents. Well, we're talking about the independent governments of Ukraine ever since they got independence in 1991. The statements that I read out were from government officials who continue to serve in the Ukrainian government. Right. And number two, if you're talking about Zelensky specifically, yes, he has continued to bar bar the sale of ship engines to India. And last year, Zelensky signed a deal with Pakistan while barring Indians from getting engines. He signed a deal with Pakistan to upgrade their tanks that they already sold them. So this is Zelensky very specifically. Second, Dr. Swami, you taught me Raj Dharma versus Swadharma. Now, Swadharma, I feel very sad for these people who are, being refugees and all of that. Raj Dharma tells me, your problem, not mine. Ukraine can deal with it. This is not a thing for India to get into. Next, I would also like to remind everyone, if Zelensky and even his prime minister is a Jew, Simchal is a Jew, remember, Israel also refused to condemn it. Even now, Israel refuses to impose sanctions. They had to vote against Russia at the UN General Assembly because America hugely pressurized them. But they've refused to enact a single sanction on Russia. And nobody is closer to America than Israel is. All right, in private, have you seen any of the Israeli leaders condemning Russia? Absolutely not. And Israel is something, who's almost seen as the 51st state of America. Jagdish, I think I already answered your question.
But Israel, excuse me, Israel voted with America.
Yes. So that's what I said. Yes, that's what I said. They got.
I would like to say that
no.
there are.
One second. I haven't finished yet. One second, Jagdish. Jagdish, 1 second. Let me finish. Let me first finish. Let me first finish. I have a whole load of questions to finish answering, so I'm going to finish answering them. So Israel only did that one vote, which, if you remember the last time we discussed operational versus, do you remember the Hezbollah episode? Operational versus this thing. Should we have voted in one or two things? Sure. But even if we didn't vote, no problem. At any rate, in any meaningful way, Israel has refused to condemn it. No Israeli leader has condemned it. Third, Jagdish, you asked me the USSR question, already answered, because like I told you, all the instances of betrayal that I quoted were of Ukraine, the Republic of Ukraine, not when Ukraine was part of the USSR. And second, you asked, is reciprocity the condition? Yes, absolutely, reciprocity is the condition.
No.
No. 1 second. Let me finish. 1 second. Let me first finish answer all the questions. Tomorrow, if my mother goes and kills somebody, I will obviously be supporting her. But if the neighbor auntie goes and kills somebody, do you think I will ever support her? Absolutely not. So it is purely based on reciprocity. Diplomacy is always based on reciprocity. Okay. Next, the sovereignty of Ukraine. You also raised this question, Jagdish, the sovereignty of Ukraine to join NATO. Yes, it is absolutely the grounds for an invasion. And let me tell you why. Do you remember how often Dr. Swami used to keep asking for the Kahuta reactor to be bombed? Every time Pakistan tried to go nuclear, he wanted Kahuta bomb. The Israelis actually had the guts to go bomb the Osirak reactor in Iraq. It is absolute casus belli. Tomorrow, if Russia flattens Ukraine, annexes it, occupies it, and rules it with an iron fist, it is absolutely Russia's right. Because the only rule of international law is that might is right. Full stop. There is no other rule. Ever since the Westphalian system was established, that has been the only rule of international law.
But in what way did Ukraine threaten Russia? I can understand Pakistan threatening us and then we wanting to bomb Kahuta. But in what way has Ukraine threatened Russia?
Ukraine has threatened Russia in several ways. First, let's start with 2014. Starting from 2014, there was the burning alive of the 46 ethnic Russians at the Odessa Opera House, which we know who did it. They have still not been prosecuted. Since then, 14,000, not one or two. Kosovo invasion happened after 300 Kosovars were killed. 14,000 ethnic Russians have been killed by Ukrainian Nazis of the Aidar and Azov Brigade and the regular Ukrainian army. So if you are going to accept a humanitarian intervention principle, then Russia has every principle of humanitarian intervention here. Then there is the principle of preemptive threat. Now, have they dressed? Is it a preventive threat dressed up as a preemptive threat? Yes. But unfortunately, when we conferred retrospective legality on the 2003 invasion of Iraq, we retrospectively conferred legality on preemptive being preventive action masquerading as preemptive action. So I can play the international law anyway. Remember, I was coached by my communist mother. We didn't have Ganesha and Vishnu in our puja room. My mother used to keep Lenin, Marx, and Stalin in our puja room. And
Even
she used
now?
to beat me every time I didn't. Yeah, even now. And you know this, Dr. Swami. The first time you came to my house, you saw, because I hadn't memorized the 10 pages of Marx that I was meant to memorize every day. She used to beat me up. She used to beat me up black and blue if I didn't memorize my Marx. You saved me from all of that. So, I've grown up in an extremely tyrannical communist household. Now, lastly, with fence setting, does it hurt? Yes. Does your bum grow numb when you sit on a picket fence like that? Yes. Now, the problem is, you only showed the picture of the picket fence. You didn't show what was on the two sides of the picket fence. One is fire and brimstone, hellfire. The other side is a pond full of piranha. So, my bum hurting is much better than me being burnt alive or me being eaten alive by piranhas. So, in that particular situation, when we are a third world weak country, I would much rather accept my bum hurting going numb. Thank you.
Okay.
You didn't
What
answer
about
the other question, Abhijit, about the China-India triangle, Russia, China, India.
Yeah, very important. So, what would Russia do? Russia would again play neutral. But they would not cut off arms supplies to us. That is how Russia is going to play.
I disagree with you on that point, but anyway, it's a hypothetical, but anyway.
That's a speculative thing, yeah. What about our friend here? What does he have to say?
Ravi, go ahead.
Ravi.
First of all, this principle might is right. Now, this is not a principle civilized people can adopt. Neither in the country. Do we like to live in a country where might is right, Abhijit? Would that be appropriate? Is it okay if we live by the principle that might is right?
Yes, it's called the state monopoly on violence. Yes, it's called the state monopoly on violence. The state is the most powerful actor, and the state's might is always right.
You did not qualify that. You said might is right.
No.
So if might is right, anybody doing anything to anybody else is fine. So if we go by that principle, you see, absolute cynicism is as futile as absolute idealism. Okay, so when we say
by that measure, we should have also gone against America's invasion of Iraq. We should have condemned that. Where would it have gotten us? We should have condemned America's bombing of Libya and Syria.
Whataboutery is a fallacy, not an argument.
No, this is not whataboutery. It is a very specific principle.
Factually, Atal Bihari Vajpayee moved a resolution in Lok Sabha calling it an act of imperialism. And please go and check the parliamentary records. We did condemn it. Whether I approve of it or not is another matter.
Yeah.
But the fact is that he did condemn it.
So might is right is not a principle we can abide by, neither in the country nor elsewhere. Secondly, now when you say that unka to right hai, why were they aligned with America? No, why are we aligned with America in the Indian Ocean? What is the Quad? If tomorrow China attacks us, saying that ye to by the way, Quad has been called mini NATO. Now India was becoming mini NATO, so we have a right to attack India. So would that be fine? This is might is right. A civilized world, we can never actually civilization. The march of civilization is predicated on the principle of justice. So we can never say that, and we can also never say that mar jaye koi ho jaye Ukraine mein. This is not something very. We don't do credit to ourselves or our country by saying such things. That is one thing. Now, secondly, I would like to say that as I mentioned, that perfidy by US. What about Vietnam? What about Iraq? No. If I I kill somebody and I'm charged with murder, I can't say Dawood Ibrahim has killed hundreds of people. He has not been charged with murder. Why should I be charged? This is not an argument that can ever be made. And you mentioned that I will also like to say that Ukraine is not fighting just for their own country, Ukrainians. They are also fighting for us, for Taiwan. They are fighting for everybody who can be oppressed by tyrannical powers, by Russia, by people like Putin and Xi Jinping. I mean, these are tyrants. We should recognize that. The sooner we do that, the better. And you see, उनको होता है तो मुझे क्या? See, when first they, there is a very famous poem. You must have read that. First they came for the Jews, but I said nothing because I was not a Jew. So first they came for Ukrainians, then they would come for Poles. Then China, today it would be, tomorrow it would be Taiwan, the day after Philippines, the day after that India. So, and nobody would help us. So if we don't stand together, we, all of us fall separately, individually. So this argument, I mean, we should never make such arguments. This I don't find very pleasant, actually, apart from very irrational. And as far as national interests go, our national interests lay with the West. Period. They are becoming our strategic partners. We are getting defense equipment from them. We get investment from them. We want to get investment from the West. Russia can do nothing. It is unreliable. It's an ally of China. These are my points.
It's a junior partner of China. Not
junior
an
partner. Oh, yeah.
Abhijit, and Mr. Ravi Kapoor, if you are finished, then I have some things for Abhijit.
Yes, I'm finished.
Abhijit, you have said some of the reasons for why Russia invaded China. Russia invaded Ukraine. You said about some Russian origin people and that and this. You know what is the foreign media spreading about India? That we are ill-treating the Muslims. They are talking about CAA. They are talking about Kashmir. The way it has been portrayed that in India there is no democracy and we are ill-treating the minorities. The reasons which you gave me as far as Ukraine was concerned seem something like that. If tomorrow on this ground, one of our neighbors, or for that matter China, on some pretext, was to invade us, do you think that we would like all this thing? No, you enacted CAA, you abolished the special status of Kashmir, where China did raise an objection. So all this grounds seems very flimsy ground to invade another country. And another thing, you have forgotten to say, I was referring to you not about Ukraine alone, what statement or no statement. I was referring to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union doesn't mean only Russia. The Soviet Union was a bigger country and Ukraine was also part of the Soviet Union. So why do you want to give credit all to Soviet Union to give it to Russia? There were nuclear heads in Ukraine also, no? So Soviet Union compromised of all these countries together. Perhaps Ukraine and Russia were one of the two major countries in the neighborhood, but it can't be that just because some Western countries or some interested countries are spreading that no, minorities are not safe in India or CAA is bad for the minorities. It has nothing to do with Indian minorities or about special status of J&K. So these cannot be any grounds for people to invade us.
Okay, we've accumulated enough questions. Can I answer now?
Go ahead.
No, because we have a short problem of time. First, we'll come back if we can. Ramesh wants to say something.
No, I'm just adding to what Jagdish is saying. Abhijit, there's been reports that Russia is scaling back. I'm not how far it's true. We've been reading these reports again. I don't know how much we can trust these reports. That they're scaling back the whole-scale invasion and focusing only on the eastern part of Ukraine and just Donbass and that region and not going anywhere beyond that. I'm assuming that it is true. And Russia says, okay, we're going to stop all other wars and just focus on the eastern region and whatnot. And they kind of tacitly accept defeat, but not necessarily open. What would be India's position in the world? Because now India is now stuck. Like what you said, whether you're jumping on Piranha or the fire. Now the issue is going to be now that Russia has scaled back and not worried about it. So India is stuck alone, saying that now you didn't take a stand against this. Russia themselves are pulled back. So won't India lose credibility worldwide? I mean, where does your Swadharma go there? I mean, is it okay to take a hit in your Swadharma? Because if this, in the, again, I'm saying it's hypothetical, but that's what the news reports say, that they're going to stick to the eastern part.
Yes, Abhijit.
Okay, can I answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So accumulating. Ravi, to answer you, I did in fact qualify it right at the beginning. I said international law.
No, not Ravi.
Okay, I
Ramesh.
said there is.
Okay.
Sorry. No, Ravi
You're
Kapoor.
talking about Ravi Kapoor. Okay,
Ravi
all right.
Kapoor. Yeah, I did say international law. All
in
right, so you
international
took
law,
it to. So 1 second, I haven't finished yet. Ravi, you spoke. Now I'm going to speak. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I did say international law. Okay, personal law is different, domestic law is different, but in international law there is no law. Let me give you a simple example. There is a man, I want you all to Google a chap called Daniel Reisner. He teaches at the Herzliya Center for International Studies. He is the father of drone warfare. Okay, where international assassinations of leaders was illegal, where violating sovereignty was illegal. He brought about the principle that slowly doing it, setting the precedent for doing it, is what ultimately makes it legal. And they went on doing it. The Israelis started it and the Americans went on doing it to the point where today drone assassinations are considered legal. Something that 15, 20 years back was considered illegal. All right. So I don't care about if you find it tasteful or offensive or whatever. I really don't care if anybody finds it offensive or tasteful. I am just going by how international law is dealt with as a body or as a canon of law in the international scene. All right. So this is how it is. Might is right is the international law. There has never been. We would like to believe that that is not the case. Definitely with middle powers, that has definitely been the case. But when it has come to the big powers,
I would like
that has
to
never
make.
been the case. So
Abhijit,
one second, let
only
me
one
finish. I
sentence.
have
Only
one second. No, because I'm making a whole set of points which are related to this. Okay. So this is to do with Daniel Reisner. I suggest you go check out how international law works. Right. Next, drawing from this, because Jagdish made this point that, you know, the Western press says, oh, you know, India is increasing fascism, CA, NRC, and all of that. Who brought about the principle of humanitarian intervention? It wasn't Russia. It was America that brought it out. It was NATO that brought it out. Who set that principle? So today, what Russia is doing technically prevents us from this in the future. Because what Russia has done very importantly is it has cancelled this whole notion that the West is the only person that can go do these humanitarian interventions as and when they want. Right? Because now NATO is never going to do it again. NATO thought it could get away with every humanitarian intervention it did. Why? Because of increasing dictatorship, increasing fascism, increasing everything. Now it can no longer get away with it.
But Ukraine is not NATO.
Can I say a sentence?
Ukraine is not NATO. That doesn't matter.
Can I say a sentence? One sentence. Abhijit, can I say one thing? No, you will finish. You said something, international law might is right. What I am saying, something very basic. There's a difference between is and ought, is and should. If something is wrong with a country or anywhere else in a system, any system, that doesn't, if something goes on, that doesn't mean it should always be like that. So if in international law might is right and we see it in many places, it doesn't mean that it should continue to be like that. So that is the only the difference between
sir,
okay.
So you may choose to be Mother Teresa. You're welcome to do that. I choose to be a realist. I live in what it is. I don't believe in what should be.
That's not
I
realism.
have never had. No. That is realism. Unfortunately, that is exactly what realism is. That is exactly what realism is. Now you can work towards you can work towards an end goal, but you live in the world that you're given. Right. So I would prefer to live in the world we're given and deal with things as they are.
Yeah.
Well, I feel no reason to make it better.
Maybe,
if you want to
maybe
go ahead. That is the main reason I will not win the Nobel Prize.
Maybe after 1 or 2 weeks, we will have another session of the same thing, because this is the first time I think in India we are discussing this issue, Ukraine or Russia. Otherwise, so far it has all been Russia.
Dr. Swami, and this is the only
Just two
platform
quick-
where we have our panelists come and disagree with each other and not being an echo chamber. Okay. And
Yes.
Yes.
See,
No,
I
no,
only,
but
I
Abhijit,
only,
Abhijit,
Dr.
let me tell
Swami,
you.
Dr. Swami taught me. Dr. Swami is my guru. You know this. He taught me Purva Paksha. He saw that I was this poor, oppressed child who was being beaten by my Stalinist,
Mine too.
Stalinist
One of my
Maoist
guru.
mother. You know, my mother was a member of the Maoist Stalinist Federation of India. And it was
Okay.
Dr. Swami that rescued me from this horrific
Abhijit, they've already
situation that I
roasted
was
your
in.
mom multiple times in this program. Enough of roasting your mom.
No,
Yes, but I'm not roasting my mom. I'm expressing my gratitude towards Dr. Swami
But
for expecting me.
but he
But
also said
Abhijit-
he also said if your mother goes and kills somebody, you support your mother.
Obviously, I will. She's my mother.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
before
but
we-
that is not the logic. No,
Sorry,
Abhijit.
sorry.
No,
Abhijit.
1 second. 1 second. Just 2 quick points. Jagdish, I answered your question and I'm answering it for the 3rd time now.
No,
I
you have
never
not answered
mentioned
the
a
question.
single favor. No, 1 second. You asked me why do you keep mentioning the USSR? I never mentioned the USSR. All the things I quoted were after Ukraine became an independent country and after Russia became an independent country. When did I ever quote the USSR in anything said?
Okay.
I am.
I
trying
never
to tell
quoted
you,
the
Abhijit,
USSR.
1 minute. I am trying to tell you 2 things. Purva Paksha, you are doing it, but very skillfully, you are avoiding the main answer. You told me
What answer?
that I'll tell you. You said the justification of Russia invading Ukraine was a lot of things, those killing of some Russian type of people in Ukraine. That was some of the grounds which you said Russia invaded Ukraine. I was trying to justify it, not that I subscribe to it. I've been all for 370 removal, all for CAA. In fact, before BJP started a campaign, it was Virat Hindustan Sangam which held the first meeting in December 2019 in Ghatkopar, Mumbai, in support of the then doubtful whether it is CAB or CAA. We had to put on the stage CAB because it was a bill, and by the time we had the meeting, it was CAA. What you are trying to say is you are trying to use a different reason of the Western. I am saying the Western press has been portraying India being intolerant. So can tomorrow that be a ground for invasion? Thus, as you are saying that there were Russian origin people who were killed or massacred and all that. That cannot be a ground for invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So tomorrow somebody
but
will
Jagdish,
justify it.
I get your point. I get your point. Now let me answer. That is exactly what I said. This invasion on the basis of CAA, NRC, and minority persecution is what the West has been doing for the last 30 years. They have set the jurisprudence for this. They created a principle called R2P, the responsibility to protect, wherein they justified it. They got it passed at the UN, and they have basically weaponized human rights as a tool of invasion. Now, what Russia has done is that it has shown that what is sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. So the West is going to think 100 times, and notice this is the particular perfidy of the West. Russia TV and Sputnik haven't been mouthing the kind of genocide narratives about India that CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal have.
Okay.
So who was creating the grounds for invasion of India? It wasn't Russia. Who was creating the jurisprudence, the international jurisprudence for the invasion of India? It was the West.
Anyway, we have to have closure now because it's 9:15. I'll only say that even if the Americans were not in the picture, we should support Ukraine for being pounced upon by the Russians. So it's not the American issue is not I don't care for that. Let's then wind up. Let me just
See, Dr. Swami, I'm begging you for your protection. See, my mother is WhatsApping me death threats. She's also doing all of this here. But
Abhijit, we have
WhatsApping
displayed
me
it.
death threats.
We have displayed it, Abhijit.
Yes, I'm getting death threats. See what kind of a Maoist Leninist setup. I grew up in a gulag. You should all have sympathy for me.
All right. The question, मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि आज जो बहस हुई है और विवाद हुई है, ये पहली बार हमारे हिंदुस्तान में हो रही है. आज तक सब रशिया ही के मंत्र जपते रहे हैं सब लोग. अब एक दूसरा भी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू है, वो इसमें आया है. इसीलिए हम इससे आज के बहस से समाप्त नहीं करेंगे. इस विषय को दोबारा और थोड़े घटना होने दीजिए और हम निश्चित तौर पर इसके दोबारा इसकी हम ये डिबेट करने के लिए प्रोग्राम बनाएंगे. अब अरविंद चतुर्वेदी समापन करें और इस आज की सेशन को इसकी समाप्ति करें.
Thank you, Dr. Swami, for summarizing the whole thing and saying that the debate is not ended. We will continue to discuss this and invite the different points of views like Abhijit and Ravi Shankar Kapoor. And in fact, we have had Shri Iyer also earlier on this issue, and who had a different point of view. We have decided that we will keep our program limited to about 60 minutes. So today we have crossed that, and therefore the debate is not coming to an end, with only a promise that we will continue to have this debate. But one point I want to just make before I conclude: Russia also has the right to self-defense. NATO and USA were using Ukraine and other members. You see, the NATO membership has gone in last 20 years. How many members have been added? So Russia feels threatened, and therefore Russia has right to defend. And this is not really an attack. It is only you see, attack is the best form of defense. And therefore, what Russia has done, I'm not really basically condemning it, but we'll discuss this. We'll continue maybe after 10 days when the war comes to an end. Hopefully, we'll see the implications for India once again. Thank you, Ravi Shankar Kapoor, for joining us for the first time.
No, I hope India takes the cue from you and attacks POK and take over POK.
Yes.
Well, it should. In fact, we have already made it clear several times.
And hopefully Russia supports us there. Let's see.
जहां हुए बलिदान मुखर्जी, वो कश्मीर हमारा है और जो कश्मीर हमारा है वो सारा का सारा है. So the India has right to attack POK.
Russia will have to take permission of China before.
No, we are neutral here, so we expect Russia will also be neutral then.
Yes, exactly.
You can
So
do
we are only ensuring that in case of conflict with Pakistan or with China, Russia will also take the similar stand which India has taken today. Russia will also be neutral. That's what we expect. Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Jagdish ji. And thanks the technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Gadgi Rakesh, Ishwar Iyer, Tejas, Swaminathan, Vishal Mehta, Najesh. We will be meeting next Sunday again with a different topic with Dr. Subramanian Swami and perhaps maybe a different expert. 8 o'clock next Sunday. Again, we will meet. Till then, Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.